as I get started, this right here is all you need to know. Get them to follow your feed bucket. And it's interesting. My uncle is a cattleman up in northeastern Oklahoma as well. He runs he's got about 2,000 acres, runs 600 cows. And we sit down and talk quite a bit about how handling and stuff like that. And I said, for me, the feed bucket. They'll come to the feed bucket, I get them moved into my corralling situation. He says, I do the exact same thing with my feed truck. So big ranches, small ranches, if they'll follow the feed bucket, you got it beat. There's not everybody's going to do that, so we'll talk about some keys to get those things moved out. But don't forget the feed bucket. So basically, what I like to talk and what I really focus on, there's a lot of ways. There's the traditional cattle handling, there's probably going to be some things you disagree with. Again, whatever works for you. But basically, these are just some handling things that I've come up with. And I enjoy that. As you go into handling these cattle, that's either gather them into some corrals, if you're going to have to work them, doctor them. Get them, actually just load them up to go to the vet if that's your cycle. You need to keep them in a normal frame of mind. Keep them calm. Keep them, if they're a feed bucket, give them a little feed there. Let them rest there in that corral before you load them up. Keep that stress level down. It's very key. And you can do that. It says not to have an animal do something that they don't want to do or they're not ready to do. And I was kind of doing a little bit of that this morning, and that I was walking my new calves that have never been off the farm to the wash rack. And every little thing, the fan or the water bucket and stuff like that, they took notice, ears up a little bit. But if I just took my time, let them see that item, understand what it is, we went right on. Kind of don't force them. You start jerking on that halter, or you start really pushing them past in your corrals. If you're pushing them past a loud noise or people talking or something like that, they're going to get stressed. So give them time, and keep them moving. Set up your situations where your idea is your animal's idea, and sometimes that's hard, but you want to get them in a trailer, you want to convince them that that's where they want to go. So you got to think through those situations. Animals want to avoid pressure, and they need to experience the release of pressure. We're going to talk about pressure on cattle, and that's, we're going into a low pressure program. That's what I do, and that's what I'm encouraging you to do. And so, but there's still just a small amount of pressure that you're going to have to apply to get them to move. Of course, they're a herding animal. So if you set yourself up, let's do it as a herd. Even if you're just in to doctor one animal, they like to be together. So kind of think through that. How can I do that in a herd situation where I'm just going to end up using one? And, they like to move in the direction they're headed, of course. They like to follow another animal. Again, all key things are thinking, okay, how can I get them to follow one another? Good movement attracts good movement. So, it's always nice to, get them moving in your pasture. You need movement from one pasture to the next. Get a good movement, and you will just watch. If you get one or two of them going in the direction you want, don't really fuss about those that are tailing back. You got to watch them, but most likely they're herding animals. They will all want to go in the same direction. They want to see where the pressure's coming from. So they want to, they want to feel it. They want to see it. Got to keep that in mind. They want to see where you want them to go. They want to go around you. That's their first instinct. Now they will run over you. My brother. I guess he's a couple of years older than me, so he's probably 15 or 16 years old. I was 14. We were working calves. We were in an alley. Calves are always a little more difficult to deal with. They run down to the end of the alley and turn around, and they run plumb over my brother. And he just was so shocked, just laid out there. And well, I get to laughing because, you know, boy, that's my brother, right? Yeah, I got it. Well, no, they ended up go to the end of the other alley, turn around, and he hadn't got up yet, and run right back over him again. So, you know, the brotherly love there we have there, but they will run over you. But they typically like to go around you. Yeah. And you know, under extreme pressure, they want to go back to where they came from. And that's going to be key. And as we talk about how to move them, how some of the corralling systems are made, they use this quite a bit. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but they do. If they get to an end, they want to come right back to where they started from. So we'll use that in our low stress. We know that that's what they want to do. We're going to use that as in our boom. Training is the key. I can't stress that enough. You've got to understand what you want them to do, get it planned out, and do it that way every time. Those mama cows are going to learn it pretty fast, and they're going to show it to the younger animals. Training starts in the pasture. How do you move those? How do they understand what you want them to do? And we're going to talk about how some different driving postures, let's just say, but you can do it in the pasture, just going from one paddock to the next. Or, hey, we're just out, you know, very seldom do we have extra time, but if you have that time, just bring them into the corrals, give them a little feed, let them back out. It's all training. And so when they do it repetitious. My father, I grew up on a cow-calf operation. We run about 70 cows, and it got to the point we worked them twice, 3 times a year. But those mama cows would come into their corrals, and then we'd sort those cows out from the calves. Well, those cows are running over us because they know what their next step is. They knew exactly, okay, I'm going to come in here, and then they're going to open that gate, and they're going to let me back out. So they were so well trained, about sorted themselves. So when we're talking about training, it's learning the right amount and the right timing of pressure. Again, we're going to talk about, you know, a low amount of pressure in the training. It's all going to move those cattle like you need them. Getting cattle to look at you. And as we talk about the pressure points and how to turn their heads one way or the other, move them one way or the other, of course they're going to have to look at you. And I don't think the old traditional method for the old cowboys, what did they do? Rode up behind them, loud and fast, and a lot of pressure. Run them as far as they can and get them into that corral. Well, we're going to do things a little differently. I was going to suggest things doing a little bit differently. And this is to get the cattle to look at you and then give cues of which direction you want them to move. You know, something I've learned through having cattle with bad habits is make them do completely what you want them to do. You know, if you're gathering your cattle and ultimately going to run them through the chute for, you know, annual vaccinations or something like that, or I guess a better situation, if you're only going to do 1 or 2 animals, but you had to gather 10, run all 10 through that chute, even if you don't catch their head, or, you know, whatever your process is, so they're not getting into a bad habit of, oh, well, if I do this, I don't have to go through this chute. So do repetition, the same thing, even if it's just running it. Miranda Hare, she's a young lady here, 17. She lives about a half a mile from me, and she shows Dexter's, and so she comes over and helps me quite a bit. And you know, we work really good as a team, and we do a lot of this. And she's always questioning me, Brody, why do we keep running all these cattle through with no catching? This is it, because they're going to be training, especially the young ones, that their choice, their option is we're going to go into this pen and we're going to go through that chute. That's all their choice is. So don't let them it goes right along with this. If you're pulling cattle in and a couple of them cut back, get away from you. Stop right there and go back and get them all. Because what's going to happen is, first off, that's going to make a bad habit of those that was able to cut back. And it's also done to those that you're trying to drive. They're seeing those cattle. Oh, well, those got away. I'm going to try to do the same thing. So, be patient. Start over. I know that's frustrating, and I'm a typical guy. I always want to get it done, but I've learned. Okay, and my wife will tell you how many times we said, okay, we missed 2. Let's start again. We got to get them all to flow in there. You know, overly gentle cattle. I think that from Dexter's we're going to find a lot of this. And I don't have a perfect answer other than training, repetition. But sometimes the most gentle cattle are the ones that you have to put too much pressure on them, and it can get abusive. And I am definitely not for that. So again, hopefully you can train those. I got an old cow. Never's had a halter on her, but she'll let me go up and scratch her and stuff like that. Well, she gets almost to the chute, and she stops. She says, Brody, that's as far as I'm going this time. So we work out a deal, and she actually goes in and knows she's got to do that. So training, repetition. You know, I keep talking about this cattle pressure point, and it talks about the blind spot. This was right from behind. That's where they used to push cattle. Well, the cattle don't know what they want. They don't see you. They don't know where they're going, so they get frustrated. They go off the wrong way, and those cowboys are trying to redirect them. This is the point right here. This right here on the shoulder. If you'll stand with the cattle looking at you, that's the point where they'll see you. You step one step towards their head, they're going to pull back away from you. If you step one back to the other direction, they'll go forward towards their head. Use it every day, and it works. But you got to get them to look at you. And so I'll have 5 or 6 cattle in my alley. My alley is it's about 50 feet long, but about 12 feet wide. And let's say I want my operations, I need to have 4 of those. You know, they'll all want to go to one end, and I'll look at it, and I'll try to get one to look at me. And then finally get somebody to look at me, and then I'll stand there and let them, and then I'll say, I want to bring them down that line. I'll just move over, and she'll say, okay, he wants to go right past me. And then she'll get a couple buddies to go right with her. So use this pressure point. It's very important. Try this. Again, it's right on their shoulder. It kind of moves around on, how gentle they are, and how close you can be to those cattle. But most every one of them will respond to this pressure point, and that's turning whichever direction you need them to go. Now, how do we drive these cattle? Some of you smaller folks that don't have that many cows, but even if you had 10 cows, at some point you're going to need to bring them in from the pasture. Again, I'm an advocate of this zigzag from behind, not the hard driving like they used to do. It's more gentle. You can kind of see, you're just kind of walking back and forth, keeping them going, hit them in a straight line. That's a lot less stress on your cattle. And if you get them veering one way or the other, you can change that angle of your zigzag. Say you want them to go to the right, you kind of change your zigzag out to your left. Works well. I haven't actually done this here, but this is something I researched and saw. Whereas you drop them on the side, start from the head to the back, and just do that triangle. And that, they say, seems to work really well.
Brody, where your arrow is drawn in would definitely be the shoulder of the herd, just like your individual animal before.
Exactly.
Yep.
This, as he mentioned, this right here, it's just like the shoulder. They're gonna go with what you move this direction, then that's the way you want them to go. Exactly. And so again, if you need to change the directions, you just change your angle. And it's really, I need to try this. As I was researching for this, a couple authors really suggested doing this. Is if you've got cattle going one direction and you go through a gate, and you want them to say, let's go off to the right after they go through the gate, you go perpendicular to the left. And the old farmer, one of the guys that was writing it, said it took him a lot of years to even try that. But he remembered it in some class that they said. And he said he couldn't believe it, but he uses it time and time again. So we need to try this. Again, get them through the gate. You go the opposite way that you want them to travel. Common mistakes. And I learned this the hard way. And it's kind of funny because I was talking to my uncle. Again, he's got 600 cows, and so they're working batches of 50, 70 head at a time. I had my son-in-laws out there with me, and my son, so there's 4 of us trying to bring these 20 head into the corrals. I said, okay, that's plenty. We divide that up, and we can corral them in there before I left it. And couldn't get them in there. They broke past us, and it was a mess. And I finally told the boys, okay, we're going to try this another time. So a couple of days later, I was talking to my uncle. I said, I'm just going to have to get some more cowboys to help me out. And he looked at me and he said, no, Brody, you need less cowboys. And so I went out there a couple of days later with my feed bucket. I got all 20 animals to follow me just right into the corral perfectly. So again, don't get too much help. Get the camp however many people are typically with that herd, that's what you should use. If like myself, I'm usually the one that feeds. I can usually get 99 times I can get all that I need because I'm the one. If there's 2 of you that feed, then you can use 2. Making too much noise. You remember you watch the old westerns or you look at the old cowboys and they're yeehaw, making a lot of noise. No, that just stresses them out. They don't understand where that's coming from. Moving parallel with your movement, that's going to get them confused. Following directly behind. Again, we talked about they have that blind spot. And too many people are trying to push cattle, drive them forward when they can't see what you want them to do. Now, once you get them turned, you start that zigzag, so then they get a feel of where you're going. So it's either following too far or actually trying to push from right behind. My uncle, again, he does a lot of things right and some things that he puts a lot of stress on his cattle. And one of the things he does is use dogs. And so those dogs, he sends those dogs up and they're supposed to go get in front of those cattle and get them stopped and circle them around. And that is very, very stressful because that's kind of a predatory movement in circling those animals. And so, again, that's so high stress, and he's always telling about stories of cattle breaking loose and jumping fences and stuff like that, but he's out there the next day with his dogs. So I don't know when he'll learn. But, he's been doing this he's in his 70s, so I don't know if I'll ever get him done. And not releasing pressure. We talk about, stepping aside and letting go whatever direction you're directing them with that pressure. You're looking at them, stepping them sideways. If you never release that pressure, that's very confusing. They don't know what to do. They're elevating their stress level. So remember, they need to experience what it's like not to have the stress on them. They'll think, okay, I moved this direction and he let me stand, or I moved this way and it was fine. So they learn from those. So again, I talk about my common tips would be the feed bucket, the feed bag. My cows, they can be in my backside of my 20-acre pasture and hear me in the barn. Can't see me, but they can hear me put the feed sack on my shoulder, and they come running. So definitely do that. Different pressures. How sensitive these cattle are. If they're pretty wild, you can't get that close. As they're calmer or gentle, how close you can get to them to get them to move. So just remember that there's difference. Hot shot sticks and paddles. I'm not a big advocate. It's a crutch. I say that for me. Some people I would say, yeah, you need that. Just if your cattle are a little bit hot shot, we have a stick, we have a paddle, but I try to use it as little as possible. So think about that if you're using any of those things, because that's just going to add that stress, and it just means that you're not using the pressure points correctly. You've got to have that crutch and move them with that. Something my dad's always told us, and I definitely believe it, is if you're sorting your cows and calves, you sort your cows away from your calves. Because they have got been trained, they know to move away. I don't know if you ever tried to deal with, I'm sure you have dealt with calves. They're the least trained animal on your place. And so they'll go every different direction. Doesn't matter what pressure you put them on, they're going somewhere else. So we've always had very good luck sorting the cows. And even if you have to kind of, I want to work the calves, or I want to work the cows, and so I have to think about how I'm going to do that. I'm going to sort the cows out first, but then somehow I need to circle those back into my corral system. So it just takes a little planning. A lot easier to do there. The rope halter. This is really where we use a lot of that is in the head chute. Now I know if you're doing 70 or 80 head of cattle, like a big ranch, they don't have time to put halters on. But I like to, when you're dealing with tattoos and putting ear tags on, various things. We'll slip a halter on, even though it's in the head chute. Tie that to the side. They're not jerking. They're not tearing their ears open. So the use of halter, I think, is something that you might think slow your process down a little bit. It'll be a lot easier on them as well as on you. Something I learned early on is if you get to a situation that's pretty tight and you actually have to physically get in contact with cattle to get them moved a little bit. I said you don't do it behind, but if you're in a small alley trying to get into the squeeze chute, some kind of bogged down, if you get right up in contact with that animal, they can't kick you. Okay, they don't have the range to do that. So, but you've got to be right there. You get any distance from the tail end of that cattle, and they'll kick you. But if you stay right up against them and do your pushing that way, I've yet to be kicked that way. So, just a little.
But you end up with green pants.
You do. Jim, you're exactly right. Ask my wife. She always knows when I've had to do that.
Plenty of the green pants.
It's kind of a common sense thing, but your new moms, it's new, and they're trying to protect that baby and kind of the bonding of that baby. So don't work those cattle if you don't have to. There may be some necessity, and there's some that like to do the bonding, doing the and that's fine. But typically in my situation, I'm not bringing them all individually and stuff like that. So I just leave those new mamas, and there's babies out alone. Kind of opens it up for a little discussion that if you're calving year-round, when you annually need to doctor your cattle, your vaccinations, you may have a cow and a calf out there, and so then what do? Do you leave them out, or do you have to? I say don't bring them in. I'm going to advocate having breeding seasons. So then all your calves are about the same size, so that you can get your calves up to 3 months old, 4 months old. Scheduling bringing your whole herd in. Be patient with your calves. They're the least trained animal. I have trouble with this. I get upset. Calves are going every different direction. Be patient. I mean, as my hair is getting grayer and grayer, I'm kind of starting to understand that just take it easy. Cattle, of course, don't like to move into a shaded area or dark space. Some of you maybe have a nice place in the barn. Just understand that if it's shaded, they have going to have a hard time with it. Also experienced it today that my cattle have been here since Wednesday, and I try to get them out in the sunlight, but walking from that shady barn out in the sunlight, they're a little hesitant as well. So just be understanding that what their environment is. If they're going into a different environment, that light will change things up. You know, your horn versus I've got both horned cattle and polled and dehorned cattle. You know, your space confinement, or you're planning your space, your confinement spaces. My horned cattle are so mean. They're always wanting to jab. They're the dominant cows, and so when I bring them in, I bring it into a space that's really big. Actually, last couple of years, I've been able to train my cattle that my dehorned and my polled cattle come into my confinement space and feed. Whereas my horned cattle know that they're going to get fed right outside the confinement. So when I bring them all in to work them, I already have them kind of separated because they're already trained. So then I can move them in. But even the horned, again, with the horns, I keep them spread out, and I don't crowd them into the smaller spaces rapidly because they'll start hooking each other. I mean, it's just something you got to plan. Again, I got both. You have to work about it. Trick my uncle. It does work. And Miranda and I, we proved it 100% this last time, this spring when we got them together. Is if you have horned cattle, they tend to not know to turn it a little bit or get it through that head squeeze. I've got the automatic where it'll hit their shoulders and close on them. If you'll get them to put one horn through and keep pushing, their heads in there. Give it a shot. If you can get that, just get one horn in. It's a trick, and it definitely will hurt on those horned cattle. So anyway, now we're talking about we've got them in, and we're ready to handle. We need to, corrals, whole type of different operations. I know this is yesterday. I think or this morning when the panel was talking about that it can be a big expense, and it's something I'm saying don't have a big expense. Do what you need to do, but I want you to be safe with your handle of your cattle. I noticed a couple of the breeders said that they don't even have a head gate. Well, and that's fine if they get it to work out, if they're knowledgeable enough. I think for my safety and for the cattle safety, I'm going to advocate at least a head gate, because it kind of holds them tight a little bit so you can be working with them. So again, the sorting and holding pens, it's just a planning. If you have just 10 cows, okay, have a space that you can bring 10 cows in and comfortably move them around. If you have bigger herds, I would say your alleys and where you're kind of driving them, that you physically need to be in with them. And where I talk about, you use your pressure points, you get them down to one end and you need them to come by you. You just want 4 to come by you. You get them set up 12 to 16 feet wide. Mostly on the foot is more towards 12. Mine are 12. I don't have any problems with that. If you're ever on horseback, they really need to be on the 16 with the horse. But make sure you've got enough alley, not too wide, but you won't forget. And again, we're talking about different systems: the bud boxes, the tubs, the funnels, head gate only. A lot of options depending on how you are and what you're doing with it. But we'll talk a little bit about some of those systems. Adjustable alleys, they're very nice, but they're expensive. So consider the cost. What the adjustable alley is really nice is that your cattle, when you get them almost to the chute or to the head gate, if you're just using a head gate or even into a chute situation, you don't want them to have enough width to turn around. As I mentioned, the cattle nature is that they want to turn around and go back to where they came from. So an adjustable allows you to do cows and then squeezes down into a calf size. That's where you run into most of the problems. I don't have the adjustable alley yet. It's on my wish list, but I've got a fixed sit alley, and my calves are turning around on me. And then, again, it just adds stress to them. The more you can flow, the faster you flow, the better it's going to be. Only fill from your alley into how much you can hold. I'll look at we'll show you the tub system. which there's definitely the proper ways to run through that. But my dad never worked his tub the right way. He'd fill that tub up with more cattle, and so some cattle had to stay in the tub portion and didn't have any space in the alley. And we were forever fighting cattle going the wrong direction. So again, if you got an alley going into your chute that has 2 spaces, run 2 in there. If it's got 4 spaces, run 4. Don't try to overcrowd them and leave them where they're not supposed to. This works for me. This is just kind of a personal tip. I run my cattle through their alley, through the chute, and then I add panels into the trailer. All the time I grew up, we'd back up the trailer into a 12, 14-foot alley, swing that trailer open, and try to run, 10 calves into the trailer, and you've got to put a lot of pressure on them. And they're turning around. They get to that trailer, they don't like it, they come right back at you. And in that situation, we didn't have any squeeze possibilities. So when I got my own ranch and stuff like that, I just set up a couple extra panels. I have them go through the head chute. I don't catch them or anything, but just veer off with a couple panels and actually go through the little sliding door. And it doesn't matter if you're doing 1 or if you're doing 6, they'll follow each other. And I've had a lot of success doing that. So you might think about an easier way to load than just opening that big 7-foot gate and trying to push those cattle in there. Another problem I had is that, a lot of my corrals, I have stock panels. They're raised up off 8, 10 inches high. They got the legs on them, stuff like that. Well, we have Dexter cattle. Young Dexter cattle definitely get their heads underneath there. And I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but they will lift that panel high enough to get out. So what I've done is I've taken some actual field fence. Actually, I've got some horse fence on the problem area that I have, and I've attached that on the inside of these stock panels, and haven't lost any cattle since then. So that's just kind of a little tip. Nothing that's going to grab them, nothing's going to cut them, but it's just your typical field fence, and they can't go underneath that. So now we're going to look at a couple of handling. There's a couple of things you can do here. This is a good example of if you just have a gate. If your cattle are docile enough, depending on what you do, you can just put her in there, shut that gate, kind of tie it off to the other fence. Not a lot of control, but depending on what you need to do to this old cow, just a gate attached to the fence definitely would work. Here's a little bit of a simple, smaller. You can see this is where you bring your cattle in. There's enough space for whatever you have. And they have this little gate. You kind of push a few down and right in and through there. So very simple, box style. This is not a butt box, but this is just a box style. So you can save a couple, 3, 4, 5 panels, and you're able to catch those. But again, I'm a big advocate, personal preference, having a head gate to be able to catch that animal. So here's a picture of one I found. You can see the cattle are say out here. This is their gate, their sweep gate. Push it back around. They come through that little chute. Very simple, but again, it allows you to secure those cattle. Instead of sending them to the vet to do your annual vaccinations, to tattoo, put your ear tags in, your fly tags, your worming, just some maintenance of your cattle. A little operation like this, little setup, I think you can do a lot of work there. As you get more and more cattle, this is what's called a tub, and cattle come down an alley, and it comes into this area, and this gate is open, and it kind of comes in behind them. And again, this is where my dad always messed up, because he only had space for 4 cattle in his alley. We put about 10 in here. So that means 6 cattle have to stay in this tub area. Well, of course, when you open up to do the next one, which direction is that cow right here in this opening? His head is going out. He's backing in. And so somebody, these tubs these are all solid sides, and you really don't want to jump down in there. So it's just trying to do it from above. So that's why I think you can use tub systems very effectively, because there's a lot of movement. And if you move, so if you've got a space for 4 cows, and you bring 4 in there, move them through there, it works really nice. You just got to understand, this is not a holding area. It's a pass-through, get them down single file. I think that's where a lot of people mess up and don't understand the flow of a tub system. So again, this is just a live picture. You can see how this one's set up. This is my situation. I really have effectively worked in the bud box. And what a bud box is the cattle are coming in, they're 12-foot alley. They go past the chute entrance down into this bud box. This is the gate, it shuts there. So what they do is they come down here and they want to go back to where they were at. That's their nature. We talked about that. And so if you shut that gate and you walk down this side, right down here, those cattle are going to move around and they're going to see that's where they can go. And it's very effective and it's easy to train your cattle to do that. Now I will tell you that calves take some training. And I have to put a little portable panel right here to do a little bit more funneling. So they'll come in here and get them. It doesn't take too long. But very simply, you can use panels. That's what I've got. This says it's 14 by 20. I think mine's 18 feet. I usually only put 2 to 4 cattle in there at one time. And it's all about flow. Again, they talked about they want to go in a direction, they want to follow each other. Flow is the best way to do it. And again, for a simple construction, the bud box, I think, is really something you might want to consider for setting up. Again, here's a live demonstration, just using panels. These cattle came in through here. He shut that gate. He's walking down this side, and those cattle are moving back around and coming into that chute. So you caught them. So that's kind of about all the suggestions I might have. Just want to know if anybody had any questions. Any examples? Anybody that's something that maybe I didn't mention or a tip that really works for you? Yeah, Patty.
I'll share a tip. One of the things we found that is really useful to have is a hog sorter panel. I don't know if you've ever seen them. They've got either a 2x4 or a 2x3 red plastic sheet. They're fairly lightweight. They're actually very protective. But if I have one and my husband has one and we've got a cow that's hard to move or we think we might get kicked, it gives you protection to put in front of you, and it gives you a solid, it's light enough weight, and it's got handles built into it, so you're holding it like this in front of you and you're just walking that cow. And what she sees is just a solid wall walking towards her, and you've got full protection. When we're handling calves, calves are trying to turn around or wanting to get them onto the trailer, real effective. It's right down at their level. They can't go under it. They can't go around it. It's walking. It's walking right on, real calm. And we have 3 of those. They also make really nice portable sunshade. You've got a cow that's in a corralled area, so you've got a sick cow or a pregnant cow, and you don't have real good shade in that area. I just tie them up. And all of a sudden now I've got a windbreak or I've got a sunshade that's really easy to set up. So they're very versatile to have around. They cost about $65 a piece. And you will find multiple uses for them. But they're really good protection from getting kicked. If you've got to walk behind the cow, they're very good protection against the green pants phenomenon that you've heard. They'll move on the panel and not on you. So just keep that in mind.
Panel right up against them, because you give a little distance, they're going to kick that panel and it may knock you over a little bit. You're right. No, thank you, Patty. That's very good. Those are kind of the tips that's always nice to share. I will say that Patty was talking to her yesterday, and something that I want you to keep in mind. And in handling our cattle, definitely can be effective. can affect how we're doing this is smell. We experienced some of that in bringing some of my cattle. I solely work with my cattle, and Miranda helps out sometimes, but they know what I smell like. And then I handed one of mine over to Rick Harvey to help me unload, and he's got a whole different smell to him. And she didn't know who he was, and she was very bulky, a little excited. And so I think you can experience that as you're handling on a day-to-day basis. Is that be aware. If somebody puts a lot of cologne on, or somebody puts a lot of perfume on, or just anyway, they pick up on that, and it is different, and so it's a little bit concerning to them. And so just kind of keep that in mind as you're working that. Anything else? Any questions or other good tips? That's what we want to share. Yeah, Jim.
One of the things in developing your crowd I've always found very handy is I may have went overboard if you come out to see mine, but I like to have panels. I use some that go all the way to the ground, so it eliminates that getting their head under there. Strong burn kind of canvas is the ones I use. But I have multiple holding pins or sorting pins set up around my main come-in pin. And I have water in those also. So I can take some and start moving them. And so I put 6 or 8 of them in this one. Well, that one I can divide into 3 others. So I can then sort that 6 or 8 into a couple others and still have gates where they can come back into the main pen. That's even before I get to my tub area. So, depends on how many cattle, but I'm working with 40 or 45 that I bring in there, and it takes a little while. You can go out there by yourself and just keep walking them around and just keep sorting them down to what you want. You may hold 5 or 6 over in the area in one pen, and believe it or not, 10 by 10 seconds. You got a 20 or 30 foot hole with gates in between, so you have 10 by 10 by 10 paddocks or holding pens that work really well.
Did you guys hear that? I think that's an excellent suggestion, Jim, and then, again, it's definitely part of my program as well, is whatever you can, the number of holding pens you can, the more you can divide that up, I think it's going to be more useful to you, because again, you can put, well, I want these 2, we're going to do something special with them, or I got these 6 that we're going to circle back around. And so Jim suggested even a 10 by 10. If you have, say, 3, you have 30 feet, you divide them up into 3. Those are nice size to put 2 or 3, 4 cattle in there just to hold them, and then work through that. You had a suggestion?
Oh, yes. We just have some, it's cheap, it's just real thin plywood. It's not very tall. And I scoot it under our trailer where they have to go into the trailer. And that way they can't see that opening either. That when you take them to the vet all by yourself, you need to be sure to take that little piece of plywood with you to scoot it under there again.
That's a perfect example. I wouldn't have not have thought that, but the opening below your trailer, that can spook them. They don't know what's underneath it and all like that. And so this lady puts a piece of plywood there, so it's a solid surface, so they know, okay, well, there's nothing there for me to go. I'm going to go. Appreciate it, and this has been definitely a fun presentation. Again, answer any questions you come up later on. Thank you very much. Now where's Dan? Oh.